regular and irregular inflections. So we see that there are certain inflections which are used regularly. They are predictable, and there are certain which are not predictable. They have to be learnt. The words that have to be listed in a dictionary and words that do not have to be listed in a dictionary. What does not have to list performs and perform alongside perform, or pianist alongside pianist. They are grammatically conditioned variant. We have discussed them, that they are grammatically conditioned variant. They adopt certain affixes in the presence of certain other grammatical elements. But it is not correct to say that dictionaries never have anything to say about inflectional morphology. There are some thing that has to be used in a dictionary. There are two reasons why a word form such as pianist does not have to be listed, and these reasons are independent. The first, once an English word is a noun denoting a kind of thing that can be counted, like pianist or cat, but not astonishment or rice. Once we have determined that these words are countable and these are uncountable, so countable words have certain inflections, so we know them, right? Uncountable words generally do not have inflections, so we do not use their inflectional forms, right? Like rice, though they are in some they have some certain meanings. Astonishment may be events of astonishments, may be events of astonishment, and rices may be the variety of rices, but they are predictable. We can be confident that it will have a plural form with no idiosyncrasies of meaning. It will mean simply more than one X. So whatever X may be. The second, unless otherwise specified, we can be confident that the plural form of any countable noun will be performed by adding to the singular form the suffix s or other allomorph forms es, etc. In other words, suffix s is the regular method of forming a plural. So we can say that adding s to singular noun is a regular way of making plural, but it's not always with every word. Any native speaker of English does know that with certain words, right, they do not use s as a plural. There are some other affixes that are used to make a plural form, though these words have been taken from different other languages. So for example, if you have child, you know that it's not childs, it's children. REN is added. Tooth, there is an internal vowel change and it becomes teeth. Man, again an internal vowel change and man. So we can see that in these words, the regular inflectional process is not found. So it is another irregular process, and we have either an affix added to it, or we make vowel change within the word. A dictionary entry for tooth will be like tooth noun plural, teeth, one of a set of hard white structure, so and so. So it means that the dictionary will also give its plural because it's not a regular plural. George Orwell, in one of his books, envisaged the eradication of morphological irregularities. So he offers man to make mans instead of men. And he has cited many other examples too. In reality, as opposed to fiction, this sort of regularization is a well-known feature of the speech of young children and of non-native learners. Children generally apply the same because they have learned one method that is more common. For example, adding s to make nouns plural. So they will also add s with these nouns where there is no where there is another process for making plural. And this is also done by non-native speakers who are yet in the process of learning their language. So in all this does not inhibit us, if all this does not inhibit us from recognizing them as allomorph of the morpheme, what about different plurals, suffixes exhibited by nouns such as pianist, oxen, formulae, and cacti? So if we see that S or ES, S has different allomorph, so why not to consider these ren and I or AE as morpheme of the allomorph of the same plural morpheme? So this is a question. Can we not classify S, EN, A or I as allomorphs of a single plural morpheme? Should we not also recognize a further allomorph that we might call vowel change to accommodate men and teeth which lack a suffix? So why can't we see? This is the question of the linguist, that why can't we do this, that if we say that the S morpheme has allomorphs, so why not these morphemes can be taken as allomorphs of the same plural morphemes, because they have the same function. Admittedly, these allomorphs are quite unlike each other in pronunciation, but if allomorphs are allowed to be differ somewhat, why not can't we allow them to be differ considerably? So if they are different from each other, so we should take them differently from each other. At what point, if any, does phonological divergence become too great? Right? So this is a question that we cannot very precisely say that at what point this phonological differences take place and become so great that we should take them as example of the same. How the term morpheme is used is important. Every phonologist or different school of morphology consider morpheme or define morpheme differently, whether in a more creative sense oriented towards pronunciation in terms of which S and I represent different morpheme or allomorph of the same morpheme. So it is dependent on the morphologist who define morpheme. Or a more abstract sense oriented towards meaning or grammatical function. So we can see that are all morphemes of the same morpheme, that since they have same grammatical function, so they are allomorph of the same morpheme. So some of them are of the opinion this is more abstract in one way. A good way to avoid any confusion is to use terms such as root, suffix and prefix wherever possible rather than morpheme. So it is the middle way, that instead of considering them different morpheme, let's call them suffix, prefix, etc. and root. Take a word, say that this is base or root, and this is prefix, and this is suffix. Because the role of inflection morphology in English is much smaller than it is in other languages like German and Russian, although it's greater in Chinese, we need to be said about each word class is relatively limited. So what needs to be said about each word class is relatively limited. About English, we have a very limited inflectional process compared to German and Russian languages, right? So whenever we form some rules, that has to be applicable to other languages as well. So we can restrict ourselves by saying that we should take such irregular cases as that they form affixes or prefixes instead of different allomorph of the same morpheme.